Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Just give me a little indication you're hearing me now. All right, good. Thanks. All right, so I know we have a few other people to join in, but we can get started. Let me just pull up the notes from last time, and so we'll add to it and access, right? Because we're continuing with that. In the meantime, anybody has any questions you want to ask? Were you all able to practice a couple of the things that we did? Okay. Everybody seeing my screen? Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Okay, so the last time we had created the two tables. So let me just open them back up. If you have yours on your end, open them as well, please. All right, so these were the two tables that we created. And just to remind you of the design view for the table. So we initiated our primary key, right? We set the data types. So all of this is done when the tables are actually being created. All right. And then we came back out to the datasheet view and we started to put in data. We started to enter data into the tables. Now, what we're going to look at today is another way that we could enter data into the tables and manipulate the data in the tables, especially if you don't want your users actually interacting directly with the table, right? Because when you develop a system, you don't want your users having too much access to the back end of the system, right? So you're developing a database system. You don't want your users to have direct access to these tables, right? Because as you could see, you could do a lot. Yeah, you could go in here and change information. You could add things, you could delete, etc. And then we said we created the relationship between the two tables, all right, being a one-to-many type relationship. So anybody wants to remind us how to create the relationships? Anybody? Anybody remembers how to create the relationship?
So,
Faith?
like, how to bring up this view?
Yeah. Not only the view, but how do you go about creating relationships? Walk me through it.
So, first you go to database tools.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, it's database tools you press on first. and then underneath you'll see something called relationships.
Right?
And I think you tap on that and then click. I think you have like a edit relationships.
No. So, okay, so when you hit relationships, this window opens up, right?
Yeah,
Good. Well, when this window opens up, do you have these two tables here?
no.
No. You have to do what?
It had something on this side to I think put in the data.
Put in the
Well
tables.
I put yeah.
See there? So you'll get a window immediately opening up. Once this is blank, you'll get a window immediately opening up that says show tables. So you want to enter all the tables that you have in. Well, we had two, so we show the two tables. And then, okay, so tell me how the relationship is actually created then. Yeah, you understand what I'm asking? How is the relation actually created? So if I had two blank tables, well, when I say blank, if I had two tables here without the relationship line, walk me through how you'd create the relationship.
So I think you have to set what is similar things you put in will like the guest ID. So you have to put
Hmm.
down both. It's like when I get the pop up it had like two um areas to fill in
Right.
the
So what?
similarity.
Right. So what do? I take the guest ID from one table and I drag it across and I drop it on the guest ID of the other table. Right.
Yes.
Right. And when I do that, the relationship window is going to open. So we're going to get something that actually looks like this. Not so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. So somebody else now. What is the purpose of this enforcing referential integrity?
That is so the changes made in either table would be changed via the relationship. So there wouldn't be a problem with the data if there's a change and it doesn't go over to the other table.
Right. Next one, guy. Right? So once the changes are made in one table, we want to see the updates or we want to see the changes made in the other tables without us having to do it manually. So that's why we enforce the referential integrity rules. Okay, good. Right. So once the relationships, yes, once the relationships are created, we come back into the tables now and we're gonna see, remember the little plus signs showing us how the data from the two tables, in our case, the two tables, how the data from the two tables are linked, right? Okay, so what we want to look at is creating from that table um, something called a query, right? And by the way, that is why you link tables. That's why the tables are linked in the first place, huh? To create something called a query. All right, so anybody could tell me what is a query? If I'm querying something, what am I doing?
So it's like asking.
Very good. That's exactly what it is. You're asking a question, right? Now, in this case, what is the question that we're asking? We're asking a question that pertains to data, right? So we have guest information in a table. We have booking information in a table. And then we could add to this, we could have facilities information, we could have room information, all kinds of different things. And suppose we want a narrowed set of data. What I mean by that is this. Um, just one sec, let me just see if I can pull this up here. Right. What I mean by that is this. Look at the guest table. You have guest ID, first name, last name, address, country, number of persons, length of stay. Sometimes when we're requesting information, we don't want all of that information. Suppose, for example, I want, okay, give me the names of all the guests coming from the United States. So what do I want in that case? I just want names. I don't want the number of people coming with them. I don't want their address. I don't want the how long they stay in whatever, right? So it means that I want a subset of the information. I don't want all of it. I want part of the information. All right. So once we have that question, right, as Alyssa said, that question is referred to as a query. All right. So we query the database to bring us back the data. Now, when you query a database, a program is actually written, right? That program is a program SQL. It's written in a language called SQL. Now, at this stage, you don't have to learn SQL. You don't have to know the language SQL, right? But you do have to know um, that it is generated, and you have to know what the result of a query is. Now, anytime you run a query, and here the terms, run the query. So what do you run? And you run a program. So when you run the query, what is going to happen is that the answer to the query is going to be returned in another table, a separate table. So when you run a query, another table is created. All right. So we'll explore some of that in a little bit. So I just want to switch the screens. Right. So right. So everybody should be seeing my next the notes now. Right. So what is a query? A query is a subset of data that conforms to a criteria. So in example, in my example here, produce a list of names of students that are doing the subject IT. So again, what do I want? I want the names. So I only want, so in my query result, in the new table that is going to be generated, I'm not going to get all of this information. I'm just going to get what? The names of the students, right? And what is the criteria? What's the criteria in this here? Tell me, somebody. What's the criteria?
So like what it has to meet when the question is being asked,
Yeah, yeah,
like give me just this name and then
right.
like
So,
names only.
right. So we know the subset. The subset is the names, but what is the criteria? In other words, do I want the names of
Students that
all
are doing the
students?
subjects.
What subject?
IT.
Right. So in other words, it's not all the students' names I want. I only want the names of students doing IT. So that's the criteria. So the criteria there is that the student must be doing IT. All right. So when that query is returned, all right, when the query is returned, it is going to return simply just the names of the students that does IT. So the language that is generated in the background, and when we do it, I'll show you what that language is, or what it looks like. When the language is generated in the background, that language is SQL. SQL is structured query language. All right. The most common form of SQL that's used in Access and Oracle and all these other database programs is actually a program called MySQL. Right? So MySQL is the current form of SQL, right? That is actually MySQL 5.0 that's used as the back-end processing for a lot of databases. Okay, not just Access, but a lot of other databases that are used. So once the query is generated, you're going to have SQL being generated as well. Okay, so let's go back to the Access, right? And see how the system actually generates a query. Just I don't think I shared it. Right. Okay. So there are different types of queries. Let's look on top here. So anytime, so a query is another object, right? Remember we talked about creating objects in Access. So a table is an object. You remember a table are your files. And look all the other objects here. Queries are objects. So we're going to create a query. And anytime we're creating a query, it's from the design, right? So I'm going to click on design. And I'm going to add, because I'm doing, the first one I'm doing something called a simple query. Simple query means that there's one criteria and it comes from one table, all right? Once we're okay with that, I'll show you how to do what is called a complex query, which is where the results come from two or more tables. So if I'm using the guest table, so I'm going to add that table to my query, right? And let's get a query. What do we want to know? What do we want to know? Just now. So here's my query. My query is I want the names and number of persons coming from the US, right? That's my query. So look at how how simple it is to generate such a query. So what do I want? Now let's look at this window down here. This window down here is very important because this is where you're going to build your query. Right? This is where you're going to build your query. So we've seen some stuff here. Fields, table, sort, show, criteria. Oh, all right, we'll forget this one for a minute. So these here. So the criteria goes under whichever field our criteria is based on. Field are the fields that I want in the criteria result. So somebody tell me, based on the criteria I just asked here, what are the names what are the fields I want in the query result? Tell me.
First name, last name, country, and number of persons.
Right, correct. So look at this. All I need to do is double click on each one of them. First name, you see it puts it into the query window. Last name, country, and number of persons. Good. And so we have that. So I have the fields that I want in a query. And what's the criteria?
From the US.
So what should I do now? I go under country, the column that says country. I go in line with criteria and I type in USA. Right? Everybody with me? Okay. So now that I have that, let me just get rid of this. All right, now that I have that, that's my query. So now I come here. So I've put in what I call the parameters of my query. And I come here now and I run the query, right? Because why run? Because I'm executing a program. All right. So I run the query and you see, this is my query result here. So it was only going to show me the name of well, in my case, I only had one person, right? The name of the person coming from the US and the number of people that that person is coming with. Everybody with me? Any questions so far? All right. Now, remember I told you a program was written. A program was actually generated. Let's see what that program looks like. So if I go here, this is the only one that's going to give me something called an SQL view. All right. If I click on SQL view, this is the program that you wrote. Well, that you wrote by not writing. All right. And this code here is called SQL. All right? So you see the code is automatically generated. You did not have to write anything. All you did was drag some fields or you double click on some fields, you put in the criteria, and this code is generated in the background. All right. Now, however, SQL is a very easy language to learn simply because it is fourth generation, that's one. And two, it is written exactly how you would speak. So think about it. You're building a query. You select. What are you selecting? You select the fields that you want, right? From. What table did you select it from? Where was the condition, right? So SQL is not a very difficult language. It's not a very cryptic language in the first place. All right. But like I said, at this stage, you don't need to know it. If, however, any of you going on to Form 6 to do ComSci or you're doing IT, that at that point, yes, you will have to do a bit of SQL, especially when you do advanced databases. All right. So that is basically how you generate a simple query. All right. Everybody's good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. And I'm going to name my query. Anytime you build an object, you have to name it, obviously. So I'm just going to call this one USA query. And I just use QRY to indicate my queries, TBL to indicate tables. That's just my convention. You could actually use whatever you want. All right. So, and I save my query. All right, good. So here's what I want you all to do for me now. Um, everyone has their access open. Well, I know a couple people told me they didn't, because they were on their phones and whatnot. But most people, do you all have access open?
Yes, sir.
Good. And the last time I had asked you to create or to fill in, did you all get a chance to fill in some data into your tables?
Yes, sir.
Hmm, perfect. So here's what I want you to do for me now. Based on the data that you filled in, I want you now on your end to go and create the same query that I just did. All right? I've given you 10 minutes. Well, if you have your data already, it shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes. So I've given you 10 minutes. Create the same query on your end, right? And when we come back, I will stop sharing and I will ask a couple persons to share. Let me see how you did in creating the query. All right? So I'll leave everything open and I'll just give you all 10 minutes to reproduce that query for me on your end. All right. Anybody manage to finish this yet?
Yep.
All right. 5 minutes again. All right. Anybody finished by now? Should be.
Yes.
All right. Kai, you want to share your screen? Just on the stop mine. All right. You can go ahead.
You're gonna have to enable the participants who.
Hmm? Yeah, I did that.
You
Yeah. All right, good. So take us to the design view and explain what you did.
Right. So I added in the fields, first name, last name, country, and number of people. Then for the criteria, put in USA and clicked run. And that's when I got the query from my list of that I had made from last. So
Click on the drop down on the view.
yeah, and up.
Oh, that's doesn't come up as yet. SQL view. Right. Right.
You wanted?
Hmm?
As what you wanted?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
agree.
Yeah. There's the CD code that was generated by you actually using the design view to create the query. All right. Okay, good. Nice. So let me go back to my screen now. Okay. So that is pulling information from one table using one criteria. All right. Let's pull information now from two tables. So here we have uh, each person made a booking. All right. The booking is made uh, per individual. So we're going to create another query now. And that query is that we want the names of all persons, um, let's say arriving um, in August, right? We want the names of all persons arriving in August. Oh wait, everybody arriving in August. Okay, now. Um, let's say, oh, okay. Let's say we want the booking for all persons from the UK, right? So we go back into queries now. We go to our design again. But now remember, this time we're using the two tables to create the queries. So we have to put both tables, and you're going to see automatically the relationship is shown in this window as well, right? So in this query now, I want the booking dates for all persons coming in from the UK, right? The booking dates for all persons coming in from the UK. So what do I want? Booking dates would be the arrival date and the departure date. And I want it for all persons coming from the UK. So it means under my criteria now, I go and I put UK, capital, I think, right? So I go, I put UK, and that's it. But notice now it's data from two tables. So I'm going to run my query, right? And I got the booking dates for the persons coming from the UK. Now remember, that data, those two separate sets of data comes from two tables. But now here I have it in one table. Okay? So again, SQL, and you're going to see something a little different in this SQL statement now. You're going to see a command called inner join, right? That inner join command means that I'm pulling information from two tables, well, two or more tables, right? And this is what we call a complex query because we're using more than one table. Okay. So this would be my results of my query. Good? Everybody's good with that? Any questions there?
Say then what the names of the persons as well.
Say that again?
Then what the names of the persons as well.
No, I just want the dates of persons coming in from the UK,
Okay.
right? So, and that's another thing too, and you will see that in your SB, right? If a query asks you for something, don't give additional information. So if they ask you for the dates, persons coming in from the UK, that's what you're giving them, dates. You're not giving them the names, you're not giving them the IDs, nothing. Okay? All right. So same thing. Oh, Okay, guys, we have less than a minute, so let's run on the session and we'll come back in 10 minutes, right? Oh, in your break time, do this query on your end for me, please. Same query. Yeah, you can take a screenshot of it and post it. All right, so in your break time, do this query for me. All right, so 10 minutes, we're logging back on. You posted, Kai? Okay,
Yep.
good. Thanks, right. Okay.